From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. Alongside Kaylee Lyons, I'm Joe Matthew.
Stocks tumble worldwide with the S&P posting its biggest one-day drop since September of 2022 on renewed fears about an economic slowdown. We'll discuss those fears with Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, and we'll get the view from the UK in conversation with Rachel Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer.
The political world awaiting Vice President Kamala Harris's announcement on a running mate. Expected tonight or tomorrow ahead of a planned road trip that will bring the new ticket to 7 cities in 5 days. We're joined on the campaign by Larry Sabato from the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia.
And we'll take a look at the debate over debates with our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis are with us on another critical week for the candidates. But we began that critical week with a meltdown in the markets, with equity indexes having their worst day in almost 2 years. So let's get right to it with Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle joining us from New York. So Abigail, obviously we finished the day off of session lows, but it was still a lot of red out there.
It was certainly a lot of red out there. We have the S&P 500 down more than 3%, the Dow losing 1,000 points, the NASDAQ 100 sharply lower, and the Russell 2000, those small cap stocks, down 3.33%. So there was nowhere to hide. All 11 S&P 500 sectors lower. And so it was clearly a bad day for stocks, but it didn't start here in the U.S. It started in Japan. The Nikkei, a broad benchmark in Japan, tumbled 12.4% in the Asian session today/yesterday. The worst day since 1987. There's fears around the banks. The banks were down even more in Japan, down about 20%, because there's been something going on called the yen carry trade. Basically, a weak yen has been launched into all sorts of other risk assets, basically a borrowing structure. But there's thoughts that maybe that's not going to last. And then in addition to that yen carry trade that's really fueled the too far, too fast, the animal spirits, the froth, we also, of course, have the intersection of business and politics, uncertainty around the election, and geopolitics.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Donald Trump was essentially blaming the sell-off today on Kamala Harris, predicting the Great Depression of 2024. He called it the Kamala crash. Is there anything to that? Abigail, the unwinding, for instance, of the Trump trade?
I don't think that there's anything to the idea of a Kamala crash, because I don't think that this movement has anything to do with the economy. Yes, we had a soft jobs report on Friday, but this is really about this yen, too much liquidity in the system, and frankly, people all year long looking right past it, really not a lot of thought put into the investing patterns. If you recall, we've had a lot of these GameStop type companies, Chewy.com, soaring on just pictures of animals on X. I bring that up because that's the degree of the froth. What we do have back in the system is some fear that VIX that we've looked at many times, and some of this is the election uncertainty, because that was what started to bring it alive from the 12 level, but it's now, today at one point, higher than 65. It's in backwardization, which says that the current area of VIX is above where we'll be in October, November, and so forth, which had been heightened around the election territory. Relative to the Trump trade, it has unwound today to some degree. On the one hand, though, you have tech lower, so that would actually be positive for the Trump trade. DJT is down, and then, it's hard to know what the Kamala trade is exactly, but I put in a proxy for solar, the green energy. That's down, but it's down less. But I would say at this point, pretty much everything is down, so it's hard to parse it out between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump at this point. But I would say there's probably more selling ahead.
Bloomberg's Abigail Doolittle has been indispensable for us since the start of this turnaround here. We thank you again, Abigail. Today's market volatility fueling calls by some for the Fed to cut rates before their next meeting. Joining us now for that part of the story, Bloomberg's Edward Harrison. Edward, great to have you back on Balance of Power. How much more likely is an inter-meeting cut today?
I don't think it's likely at all, to be honest with you. I think the market was getting ahead of itself when it was making these bets. And in fact, the market has 5 cuts priced in right now until the end of the year. Likely what we're going to see is a Fed that has a lot of speakers coming out, says, wait a minute, hold on. We're going to take a measured approach. We're going to have maybe 25 basis points here, 25 basis points there, 25 basis points there, and we'll slowly ramp into this to a point where we get to a so-called neutral rate, something around 3%.
Well, it's worth keeping in mind that we do have inflation data next week that could potentially exacerbate these problems, make them feel less bad in terms of the pressure the market may be putting on the Fed, Edward. So when we consider the kind of grand sum of things there, is the Fed likely to be bowed by what's happening in financial markets? This isn't a need in like COVID 2020 era where they had to swoop into the rescue, right?
No, yeah, I don't think that they are going to be swayed by what's happening in the markets. First and foremost, because we haven't seen a reaction in the credit markets, and that's really where you see the intersection with the real economy. So they're not going to be swayed by that. In the meantime, I think that it's already priced in pretty much 95 to 100% that the Fed's going to cut in September, which is their next meeting. So that's pretty much a done deal. This only enhances the potential that they will cut. It's not that they're going to cut 50 basis points or intermeeting, but rather that they're going to give a precautionary cut and then move from there. And I think that at the margin, you really have to see real economy data go down before you get anything more aggressive from the Fed, and we're just not there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bloomberg's Edward Harrison, thank you so much. Now, turning to our other big story, the question of who will be the running mate for Vice President Kamala Harris in the 2024 race. One of the reported finalists for the role, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, gave no hint in a brief comment earlier today.
Hi, Governor. Anything on the beef steaks yet?
I got nothing for you, man.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Have a great day.
Let's bring in Bloomberg's Michelle Jamrisko, who covers the White House and politics for us for more. So, Michelle, at this point, it's 5 p.m. Eastern time, just after. We are expecting this is going to happen within the next 24 hours or less. Whoever it is has to know at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was a very smart response by Shapiro there. That's what you say when you maybe know something a little bit more than you want to let on. But yes, we're in the final throes of it, but I will say it ain't over till it's over. I mean, there's a lot of rumors swirling, especially after we know she met with the supposed top three in person. We know she has also talked with others virtually. So she could pull a rabbit out of a hat, you surprise us all, whatever metaphor you want. Get someone who's a dark horse, perhaps, or maybe not in the mix in the top tier of candidates that we're talking about. And I think one thing we have to emphasize is that the Harris campaign has said, personal rapport is very important here. So there's a lot of talk about what each candidate might bring to the ticket, but it all matters, how those meetings went this weekend, how she feels about having that person as a teammate in this fight.
Well, I love that you're open to the idea of a surprise here, but surely whoever it is knows, right? They have to go on a week-long trip with Kamala Harris starting tomorrow morning. So assuming the phone call's been made, how do they roll this out?
Well, I mean, we're going to see it, perhaps via social media, via her text message, or a video announcement as well. It'll remain to be seen how, who gets the first bite at this. Hopefully, it's scooped somewhere, hopefully by Bloomberg. But, we'll see how it's rolled out. But I think, regardless, she's going to want to make a big bang ahead of that Tuesday night start to the swing, the multi-state swing that she'll have with that VP candidate.
All right, Michelle, it's great to have you. That news, of course, break at any time. We'll have it for you here when it does break on Bloomberg. Michelle Jamrisko covering politics for us in Washington. Also today, a federal judge ruling that Google violated antitrust laws by paying to make their search engine the default option on phones. A 286-page ruling, the judge detailing how Google's $26 billion in payments effectively blocked other competitors from succeeding in the market. Google has not yet responded to a request for comment from Bloomberg.
It's also worth pointing out that Donald Trump doubled down on his repeated criticism of Google today, suggested that his fans quit using the search engine during an interview he gave on social media. Trump called the search engine, quote, illegitimate, amid claims that the search giant interfered with efforts to find information on the former president. Google also declined to comment on that. Now, still ahead, a countdown to who Kamala Harris will select as her running mate. Larry Sabato, the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, will weigh in next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
I do think the Trump campaign will be worried mostly about Shapiro because Pennsylvania is such a prize. I got to tell you, Mark Kelly, I like Mark Kelly. He's very, I mean, how do you not like him? He's a great American. But Arizona's not as big a prize as Pennsylvania. My long shot candidate is still Tim Walz. Tim, I happen to know Tim extraordinarily well. I consider him a good friend. He's just a really nice guy. And that might sell in more than just Minnesota.
Continuing the guessing game here for a couple of weeks now. That was Mick Mulvaney, the former acting White House chief of staff in the Trump White House, speaking to Kamala Harris's top running mate choices. And we are expecting, as we've been telling you, to get an announcement in the next 12 to 24 hours. Joining us now is Larry Sabato, director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, also waiting for the big pick. It's great to see you, Larry. Reuters reporting earlier today that it's now down to two, that it's Shapiro or Walz. And in a world where nothing matters more than Pennsylvania, it's my job to put you on the spot. This is Shapiro, right?
Well, that would be my pick, but I'm not running for president. But yeah, Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes. Minnesota has 10, and if you're a competitive Democrat, you're going to win Minnesota. So what do you get? I heard several Democratic officials today say, well, Walz is America's dad. Well, I happen to be in Virginia. I know Tim Kaine well. He's a great guy. And when he was picked, he was called America's dad, and we know how that turned out. So I would say Shapiro, but what do I know?
Well, we also have heard some criticism of the governor, if you will, some of it coming from labor. UAW President Shawn Fain, for example, wasn't in favor of him being tapped. We also know that he has sparked some criticism for his handling of college protests over Israel and Gaza. How many voters does he risk alienating? And is the number he could bring in larger than that for sure?
I think the latter. He could bring far more voters in than he would lose. Let me tell you something. I've learned this over many, many decades of watching vice presidential selections. If Mother Teresa were still alive, she's St. Teresa now, Mother Teresa were still alive, she were right here, and she were picked as the nominee for vice president, we'd have 50 groups tomorrow telling us in one way or another how awful she was. That's just the way it goes. All your enemies are going to come out and tell about that time that they had a problem with you. This is, and especially in the Democratic Party, my God, it's a factionalized party.
Well, I guess it's good Mother Teresa never went there, because one of these folks will be picked imminently. Larry, what is this rollout going to look like, and how important are the optics that will surround it? We keep hearing about a Twitter video. I guess that's the way you do things now. But Kamala Harris needs to seize on the better part of a week to harness that news cycle before Chicago.
No, you're absolutely right. She's going to be defined by her vice presidential pick. And people do find this to be amazing, but it's absolutely true. People don't follow vice presidents, even when they're historic, as clearly Kamala Harris was and is. Multiracial, a woman, first woman, and so on. They don't follow. So they have no idea really where she stands. They're inferring that she has the same positions as Biden, more or less, but they don't hold those positions against her because they know vice presidents don't make decisions. So this is really important. And how this new vice presidential candidate comes across will say more about Kamala Harris than it will say about the vice presidential nominee.
Well, whether it is Governor Shapiro or Governor Walz or potentially a surprise candidate, everybody's going to look to the difference it makes in a very small number of states. We know this. The blue wall, Minnesota, I guess you could say, is adjacent. Pennsylvania, of course, is part of it. How directly does one individual translate across those lines, even if they don't ultimately make the huge difference in policy? Is the prevailing notion that they could bring everybody along a good one, Larry?
My study of elections and the vice presidency strongly suggests that if they have any impact at all, it's in their own home state. They may have additional impact in another state that they have close ties to. Lyndon Johnson didn't just carry Texas for John F. Kennedy. He carried Louisiana right next door because he'd also taken care of Louisiana in various ways. So that's it. You know, how many other people in the country voted for John F. Kennedy because Lyndon Johnson was on the ticket? 3 months before Johnson became president, a majority of Americans couldn't identify Lyndon Johnson. So again, people don't follow vice presidents. That's why this is so critical.
You know, it's funny, as you say that, it dawns on me that J.D. Vance is actually going to be chasing this new ticket, kind of stalking them in 4 of the cities they are set to visit over the next week, bracketing the new ticket. If nobody cares about the new running mate, I wonder what they think about the running mate that was announced a couple of weeks ago, because MAGA Inc., the pro-Trump super PAC, is framing Josh Shapiro as, quote, wants boys in girls' sports, unquote. Is that the kind of stuff we're going to hear this week?
Absolutely. Every petty thing you can think of. I'm not saying it's not a serious issue, but that is not on the plate of massive major issues that will determine the fate of the world and the country. But yeah, look at what Donald Trump's been doing. He's used every nasty name he could think of. He's trying to find one that works. And he will eventually. That's one thing for sure. But that's what we'll get. That's what we'll get. And that's mainly what Donald Trump will do for the rest of the campaign.
Well, Larry, what we got from the former president today was repeatedly accusations that the decline in markets we saw was the so-called Kamala crash. To what extent does the person representing the incumbent party in an election have whether or not it is warranted blame for what happens in the stock market?
Well, in the stock market, I'd say very, very little, because there are so many more important aspects to the economy than whether the market's going up or down, even if it's dramatic. Also, we don't know whether this is going to continue. It could be over next week or over long before people start voting at the end of September. So that's less important than inflation, which has dominated people's view of the economy and been key in their harsh judgment, really, of Joe Biden. Will that carry over to Kamala Harris? To some degree, but again, common sense tells people that vice presidents don't make decisions, right? Hubert Humphrey didn't run the war in Vietnam, so he wasn't held as accountable as Lyndon Johnson would have been had Johnson run for re-election in 1968. You all remember that, right? That was just a few years ago.
I'll plead the fifth on that one, but I've heard a lot about comparisons to that year in this cycle. Larry Sabato of Sabato's Crystal Ball and director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. Thank you so much, as always. And coming up, we'll continue this conversation as equity markets had their biggest drop in almost 2 years. We'll look at the read-through to the economy with Mark Zandi of Moody's Analytics. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and Radio. Following the biggest sell-off in equity markets in almost 2 years, many are concerned that it's a signal that there perhaps won't be a soft landing for the U.S. economy. Joining us now for whether or not that is true is Mark Zandi, Moody's Analytics chief economist. Mark, great to have you back on Bloomberg. Obviously, today's market reaction follows what we saw Friday in the aftermath of a softer jobs report. There is a lot of concern now about a growth scare. Are you scared?
No, this doesn't feel good. And I wish the Fed had started cutting interest rates earlier so we wouldn't be here today. But I think the economy is going to hang tough. I mean, for me, the key is jobs, and we're still creating a lot of jobs. I know the number on Friday was disappointing, 114,000 jobs, but that was affected by the hurricane and other temporary factors. I think the underlying rate of job growth monthly is about 150K. That's pretty good and good enough to ensure that the economy continues to move forward, stay out of recession. But having said that, it is really critical for the Fed to get moving here. And once they do start cutting interest rates, I suspect at the September meeting, they cut aggressively and get rates back down to something that's more consistent with the equilibrium rate, that rate which is consistent with policy neither supporting or restraining growth. We're a long way from that. They got a lot of work to do.
We've been trying to gauge the impact that this may have politically in the midst of an election cycle here, Mark. And I wonder, with shades of 1987, with the idea that this market downturn could in fact represent a slowing economy, if not a recession, the extent to which that could hang over the Biden administration and the sort of Democratic incumbency overall as Kamala Harris tries to clear out her own path on the economy. This remains her weak spot, along with the border, in all the polls that we're running here at Bloomberg and what we've seen across the country. What does she have to expect this fall when people prepare to vote?
Well, Joe, if I'm right about the economy avoiding a recession and we continue to create jobs, unemployment hangs around 4%, I think that should be enough to convince people ultimately that the economy is fine. Now, interestingly, ironically, with today's market sell-off, we just see mortgage rates come down. And for lots of folks, mortgage rates matter a lot more than stock prices. We are seeing, other indicators that, might work in her favor. I mean, the lower interest rates is certainly one of them. Lower oil prices is another. So gasoline prices before all this was $3.50. It seems like it's going to be heading south closer to $3. And so that would also be a very positive development for her. And here's the other thing, Joe. With these events, I think it's now crystal clear that the Fed has to cut rates and has to cut rates aggressively. Before these events, it wasn't so clear, and maybe the Fed wasn't going to cut rates, before the election. So the irony here in all of this might be that this works in Kamala Harris's favor as opposed to being a problem for her.
Well, to that point, Mark, there has been a lot of talk on the Republican side that a cut in September before the election would be something politically to advantage the Democrat. But wouldn't a cut, especially if it's a larger one, say 50 basis points, actually signal some degree of panic about the economy, that perhaps it's turning and that could be a bad thing for the incumbent?
Well, I think if the Fed cut interim meeting between now and the scheduled September meeting, that would be kind of, what do they know that we don't know, and should we be concerned about that? But at this point, I think there's a strong case to be made that they should be normalizing rates a lot more quickly than I think they had in mind before. And so a 50 basis point cut, now that's already embedded in market expectations. I don't think that's going to be viewed as, kind of a panic cutting. I think it's going to be viewed as, hey, the Fed made a misjudgment here, made a mistake, has to catch up, and they got to cut rates more quickly to catch up.
Mark, it's great to have you back. Thanks for being with us on what I know is a busy day for you. Mark Zandi, Moody's Analytics Chief Economist. We thank you for the time. Coming up, a look at the trade relationship between the U.S. and the U.K. with Rachel Reeves, the U.K. Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's a conversation you'll only hear next on Balance of Power, Bloomberg TV and radio.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online, and then running away themselves.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday on the violent riots that have been occurring across the UK over the past week. The Prime Minister calling an emergency security meeting in an effort to quell these protests. Joining us now from New York to talk about this and a range of issues is Rachel Reeves, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer. Chancellor, welcome. It's great to have you with us today.
Great to be
on
here
Bloomberg
with you.
TV and radio. Just to start with this, you're in New York and Toronto, for that matter, to help drum up investment in the UK. A lot of folks are looking at these images of riots over the past couple of days, and I wonder your thoughts as investors try to consider the impact of these riots as they consider the UK as a destination for investment.
Well, those responsible for the disorder that we've seen these last couple of days in the United Kingdom, they don't represent the vast majority of people. They are a tiny minority. And as our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, says, they will be met with the full force of the law, and they will feel the consequences of their actions. But it's been great for me as Chancellor to be here in New York today and meet with US investors to send a message loud and clear that Britain is back in business and we are open to business under this new government led by Keir Starmer. We won the election just over a month ago with a mandate to grow the economy. Number one mission of this new government is to bring economic growth and jobs and productivity to all parts of the United Kingdom. And that's a message that I've been really pleased to share with investors here in New York today.
Well, Chancellor, of course, trade has a big impact on the economy, and we have an election of our own here in the U.S. coming up just a few months from now. When it comes to a potential U.S.-UK trade agreement, do you think that's more likely to happen under a future Harris or second Trump administration?
Well, it's up to the people of the United States to choose who they want as their president. But the UK government, whether that's Labour or a Conservative government in the UK, has always worked with whoever's in the White House and whoever is in Congress. And that will continue to happen. The US doesn't have a greater friend than Great Britain. We are the closest of friends and allies. And already, Britain's largest trading partner is the United States. Of course, we want to build on that and make it easier for great British businesses to export to the United States and to make it easier for great American businesses to export to the United Kingdom. So we want to strengthen and deepen those trade ties. Trade is good for countries, and especially when it's between countries that share each other's values in the way that the UK and the US do.
Well, as long as Joe Biden is the president, there's a debate underway, and I suspect that will continue if Kamala Harris becomes the next president, about what to do with the Trump-era tax cuts from 2017. There's an effort by Republicans to extend them or make them permanent. Democrats here say we can't afford it because of the impact that would have on our debt and deficit. President Biden goes further to say the super rich need to pay their fair share when it comes to taxes. Is that something you agree with?
I think people should pay their fair share of tax, and one of the challenges we have in the UK is a gap between what should be collected by His Majesty's Revenue and Customs and what is actually collected. But we made a commitment in our manifesto that we'll be sticking to, which is that we don't want to increase taxes on working people, and we will be keeping income tax, national insurance and value-added tax at the rates they are for the duration of this Parliament. I would like taxes on working people to be lower, but I believe that you can't make promises without being able to say where the money is going to come from. But the tax burden in the UK has got too high. The tax burden in the UK is at a 70-year high. I want to bring that tax burden down because I want to make Britain the best place to start and grow a business, and I want working people to keep more of their own money in their pockets. And that's what people will have with this new Labour government. And it's why it's so important that we grow the economy, because the last few years in the UK, there's been lots of debate about what level of taxation and what level of spending, but it's missed the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And the bigger picture is growing the economy. And that's why I'm here in New York today and tomorrow, and then in Toronto later in the week, to bang the drum for Britain and to say loud and clear that Britain, with this new government, is open for business.
Well, as you mentioned income taxes there, Chancellor, I wonder, given the revenue it potentially could generate, if you're tempted to bring capital gains taxes in line with the income tax, is that something you're considering?
We've got a budget on the 30th of October, and we'll set out our policy then. But it's always important when you're deciding tax policy to strike the right balance. Of course, you need to bring in the revenue to fund vital public services, but we've also got to grow the economy. And I won't do anything that makes it harder to achieve that economic growth and prosperity, because in the end, the only way we're going to lift living standards for working people and have the money that we need to invest in our public services, whether that is our health service or our schools or indeed our police and our armed forces, is by growing the economy. And so I am determined to ensure that when we set all of our policy, including tax policy, that we're not doing anything that will deter the investment and growth that we need to see in the UK economy. But we'll make decisions around tax and around spending at the budget and the spending review later this year.
As you consider those decisions, you've said that private equity firms that co-invest on deals might receive more favorable tax treatment. What would those favorable rates look like?
Well, we've just announced a consultation at the end of July into the treatment of carried interest to make sure that the system works fairer. Of course, if you put in your own capital, if you've got capital at risk, I think it is right that you benefit from a more a more generous form of tax relief. But if it's not your capital at risk, then it's not right that you receive those tax breaks. So that's why we've launched this consultation. And we will, in the budget later this year, on the 30th of October, bring forward the changes that we need to see to our tax system around the carried interest for private equity.
Well, and of course, private equity, I would imagine, is inclusive in some of the meetings that you're having while you're here in the U.S. We understand you've been meeting with the likes of Steve Schwarzman or Jane Fraser. What have you heard from them? Have they made any commitments in regard to the UK Investment Summit, for example, or are they looking for certain things from your government?
Well, it's been great to meet some of the private equity and venture capital firms here today in New York, and I'll be doing more of that tomorrow. There's so much money that we think we can unlock for the UK economy and ensure then that British firms, start-up firms, scale-up firms can grow and access that long-term patient capital that private equity and venture can often bring to the table. And what I've been hearing loud and clear from the private equity bosses that I've had a chance to meet with today is that they welcome the change of approach that they've seen from this new Labour government, with a relentless focus on growing the economy, the reforms to the planning system, reforms to our pension system to unlock the long-term patient capital, the creation of a national wealth fund to leverage in private sector investment, as well as building and resetting our relations with our nearest neighbours and trading partners in the European Union, which is really important for US businesses when they're deciding where in Europe to locate and headquarters. So it's been really useful having the frank exchange of views with private equity and venture capital today. And as you say, we're going to be hosting an International Investment Summit in the UK on the 14th of October. And I hope that many of the businesses that I've had a chance to meet with here in the States will be over in London for that investment summit in October.
All right, Chancellor, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening here at Bloomberg. That's Rachel Reeves, UK Chancellor of the Exchequer. We appreciate it. And coming up, our political panel will weigh in on the news we're all waiting for in the next 24 hours. Who Vice President Harris picks as her vice presidential running mate. That's next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
She's going to be defined by her vice presidential pick. And people do find this to be amazing, but it's absolutely true. People don't follow vice presidents, even when they're historic, as clearly Kamala Harris was and is. Multiracial, a woman, first woman, and so on. They don't follow, so they have no idea really where she stands.
Larry Sabato moments ago on the importance of Vice President Kamala Harris's running mate choice. We're waiting to hear what that choice is within the next 24 hours. And joining us now as we do so here on Bloomberg TV and radio is our signature political panel, Rick Davis, Stonecord Capital Partner, and Jeannie Shanzano, Political Science Professor at Iona University and Senior Democracy Fellow at the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. So it's been reported today, Rick, that this is actually down to just two people, Governor Walz in Minnesota, Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Shapiro said he got nothing for the press when he was asked about this earlier today. But given the hour, we're coming up here on 6 p.m. Eastern time. We're expecting this thing's rolling out at some point tomorrow. Whoever it is knows by this point, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a video that's been produced with them in it, and it's just waiting to hit send. So, yeah, this has actually probably been figured out for a little while. And the fact is there's a lot of prep work that has to be done as far as getting them ready to show up tomorrow at a rally, in addition to having just produced a film. So, yeah, I think that there's somebody in Washington who knows the answer to this question. It's just not us.
It's interesting that a spokesperson for the Harris campaign told a Fox station in Detroit, "We understand the excitement and interest here, but VP Harris has made no decision on a running mate yet." And, Jeannie, I'm guessing you don't believe that either. So then comes the rollout. We're going to do this with the video on social media. Does that happen tomorrow morning? How do you best grasp the news cycle here to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I even heard them talking about, well, if she doesn't know by midnight, maybe things would change. I mean, we know she knows, so it's maddening. And I'm just like hoping they're dropping Easter eggs like Taylor Swift style and trying to figure them out, but it hasn't worked yet. You know, I think they're trying to take advantage, obviously, of all the momentum, of all the attention. This is a big moment for her, to Larry Sabato's point. For many people in the country, quite frankly, it's the big decision, the only big decision they have seen her make and witness. So it's critically important for that reason. And so I do think we will probably get it tomorrow morning, just in time for the morning shows. At least I hope. But, you know, it's anybody's guess at this point. I think what is fascinating, though, is we've seen a real sort of primary at the vice presidential level on the Democratic side that we didn't get on the presidential side. So that's been fascinating to watch as well, because the knives have been out a little bit on this thing over the last couple days.
Yeah, very good point, Jeannie. As we consider that we might wake up to this news tomorrow, I'm sure the Harris campaign is hoping that tomorrow morning looks a little bit better in terms of the stock market performance. It was a really rough open today. If it's like that again tomorrow, Rick, doesn't that capture a lot of oxygen in a negative way from this rollout?
I know this might be a complete shock to you, but not everybody sits there breathlessly watching the ticker all day long like we do here
Trump
at Bloomberg.
Was watching.
Absolutely.
He called this the Kamala crash.
Well, Bloomberg's people were watching for him, and I have no doubt that he'll take credit when it goes up and he'll lay blame when it goes down. But, yeah, the reality is, I think we heard that earlier on the program, people watch interest rates on mortgages a lot more than they watch the stock market go up and down. And so I think she's got a clear shot tomorrow. It's really the political press that's going. And by the way, it's summer, so nobody's really paying attention to any of this that's going on. But the reality is it's going to happen. I actually kind of think maybe they hit send at like midnight, you know, because the whole thing is packaged for the next generation Z, and like, you know, only millennials are up at that hour, and maybe that's who they're talking to now.
I love it. This is a guy who's done it before. This is the consideration. I have to ask you both about the debate, or whether we're going to get one. Laura Brown talked to us earlier, author, political scientist, about the impact that the former president deciding to back out of the ABC debate could have. Here's what she said.
Former President Trump did back out of the ABC debate. That was set. It was scheduled. His team agreed to it. And really, at the end of the day, he doesn't like the idea of now having to debate Harris instead of Biden. If he doesn't show up for September 10th, I think that is much more damaging to his campaign than if she refuses his latest proposal to go on Fox.
Jeannie, what's your thought on this? Because the Trump camp says, yeah, we had an agreement with a guy named Joe Biden. This isn't the same agreement, so why should we be held to this deal with ABC? Do you think there will be a debate at all, regardless of the network?
Gosh, I'm hoping there will be. I don't know yet. We've seen Trump trying to paint ABC as far too liberal. He's expressed issues. He does have a lawsuit with ABC, and none of that seemed to stop him with when it was Joe Biden. But now that it's Kamala Harris, he's reconsidering. I agree with Professor Brown. I do think that it is slightly more damaging to Donald Trump because he's seen as backing out. Even his supporters want him to debate. So, you know, that said, he's backed out of plenty of debates before, and I think Kamala Harris's reaction to it has been right on point, and they will continue that.
But doesn't Kamala Harris and her supporters also want to debate Donald Trump to get on that shared stage? Why shouldn't the vice president agree to meet him on Fox on September 4th?
You know, I think she should agree to meet him anywhere, anytime, and I think she would do a fabulous job, and that would be fascinating. I don't know if they're going to agree to the Fox, but if I was advising her, I would tell her that. But you also don't want him being given the upper hand to set all the rules, although, quite frankly, when Joe Biden did it, it backfired on him. So maybe that's what's going to happen again if Donald Trump sets the rules.
I will say, though, if ABC stays true to its deal, they give Kamala Harris an hour with an empty chair. You'd do that if you were running her campaign.
100%. Right? That's much better than debating a guy who never has a relationship with the truth. I mean, why ever debate Donald Trump? It's a train wreck. So unless you want a train wreck, and I think right now the vice president would be much better served having an hour of free time to help explain who she is to the American people without a train wrecking in the background.
All right, so Rick and Jeannie say take the empty chair. Coming up, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance target the governor of Georgia. Yes, a Republican governor this weekend. Rick and Jeannie will have more next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Your governor, Kemp, and Raffensperger are doing everything possible to make 2024 difficult for Republicans to win. What are they doing? I don't know. They got something in mind, you know. They got a little something in mind. Kemp is very bad for the Republican Party. He wouldn't do anything.
And they're on the same team. Former President Trump at a rally in Atlanta over the weekend, same room, in fact, that Kamala Harris was in last week, criticizing Georgia's governor, Brian Kemp, and the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger. Of course, they have a special relationship with Donald Trump, criticizing them for their roles in the Republican Party, but unclear exactly what he's suggesting they're involved in or what they're cooking up. This comes as many Georgia residents are already unsure of who to give their vote to. Back with us, our political panel, Rick Davis and Jeannie Sheehan Zaino. Rick, as the Republican, I have to ask you about this. I mean, forget the old Ronald Reagan line. Like, this is full-on assault within the party. What's he trying to do if not lose Georgia?
Yeah, he's really putting Georgia in play, but he's good at this, right? I mean, you know, he intentionally ran somebody against Brian Kemp last time around, lost by 50 points. Gee, I wonder who's more popular. Yeah, I mean, the Republicans in the state and in his campaign are scratching their head today because what we saw on Saturday in Georgia is the grievance tour returned. I mean, it sounded just like in 2020 that caused so much anxiety within the party, especially in Georgia again. He can only beat himself in Georgia. Kamala Harris can't beat him on an even race because Republicans dominate the state. Look at how well Brian Kemp has done politically. All he has to do is emulate that, and he's doing everything he can not to.
All right, so that's what's going on down south in Georgia. I have my eyes up north where you are, Jeannie, in New York, and actually for something that happened a decade ago. Because yesterday, independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. posted a video on X describing an experience 10 years ago with a bear and a bike. And it is just now coming to light. Take a listen.
I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something.
Some context here, Jeannie. He was out falconing. He saw a baby bear cub get hit by a car. He wanted to pick it up, take the meat home and the skin, but he had to get to Peter Luger's Steakhouse, so he just dropped it off in Central Park, made it look like it got hit by a bike. Is this the kind of thing that ends presidential campaigns, even though we don't usually spend a lot of time talking about RFK Jr.?
Yeah, prior to 2024, this would be an ender. I mean, stunning. First of all, can we just underscore he's talking to Roseanne Barr, and he's starting off with falconing, which is something I don't know about you guys. I haven't falconed for a long time. Then off he goes to Peter Luger's with a dead roadkill baby bear in his car, and then decides to dump it in Central Park. And the story's written in the New York Times by one of his relatives. I mean, the story is too crazy. I mean, this was, thank you, Kaylee, by the way. I forgot to thank you for raising this because it's my favorite story now of the election cycle. And I have no words except you usually talk about other kind of bears. This is a new bear story for Bloomberg.
We do.
And here we go on top of, I don't know, worms in his brain. He took the roadkill, dumped it, and to get out ahead of the New Yorker, he decided to talk to Roseanne Barr. I don't know where else to go with this.
There's no bear on the menu at Peter Luger, I'm pretty sure. Right, Jeannie, is there a lot of bear meat being eaten in Westchester County. Are we serious?
Yeah, Joe Matthew, when we go falconing, all of us from Westchester on the weekends, we see dead baby deer on the road. We pick them up, we drive ourselves to Peter Luger, and then off we go to Rockford.
What did he say? Falconing and hawking. He was out there hawking. Rick Davis, you've just been saved by the bell here. Is there anything you want to weigh in on?
Well, you know, it actually is a more interesting story than killing dogs and goats.
Well, fair enough.
And on that note, we leave it.
This has been a tough campaign for the animals,
this evening. Indeed. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And, of course, for some more serious coverage, you can always check out the Washington Edition newsletter on the terminal and online.
Well, the Bear Cub story might be there, too. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.